I would like to welcome you all once again to the panelist discussions. The name is Unshackling Solar in Thailand, brainstorming direct experience between energy entrepreneurs, public policy expert, and crowdfunding platform executive to discuss pathway toward the futures of solar energy in Thailand. So always very long name, the CFNT are fond of that, but the topic of discussion are very rich indeed. So I would like to introduce according to the name of the panelists. So it's a direct experience sharing between the energy entrepreneurs. The energy entrepreneurs, there's two on the stage. There's Kun Thanai Pothisak, who's founder Gotjik Recharge. So round of applause for Kun Thanai, please. And second, Kun Thirapong Sang Rajcharan, the co-founder and the executive managers of RE Generations Thailand. So Kun T, please. And the policy, for the policies we have Professor Ari Porn Asawin Pongpan, the Research Fellows, Energy Policy at Thailand Development Research Institute, TDRI. And the last but not least, crowdfunding managers, Kun Natsuda Pukanasud, co-founders and chief executive officers at Investry Thailand. So anyone remembers for the openings, I throw three numbers at everyone. So China, the generations for solar power is 600,000. Vietnam's almost 20,000. Thailand's at 3,000. And the 3,000, I said, less than 1%. The rest belongs to the big power plant players. Only 1% in the residents. So how do we unshackling these limitations to make Thailand have better access to solar power? So I would like to invite Professor Aripon or Professor Bui to discuss about this. So this is really a main challenge. But in the past couple of months, when we launched the CFNTs for the first time, we also posed a challenge on PDP 2024 that there's the public hearing in the middle of the years, and right now, the PDP 2024 has not yet launched. We might have to call it PDP 2025 because we're at the end of the year. So what is PDP having to do with it? And what about those solar powered parts in the PDP? Is there any way forward? Thank you very much for the CFNT for kindly inviting me to explain about the unshackling the solar in Thailand. Everyone's fully aware that solar power in Thailand is very high potential. It's actually the best one to produce a clean energy for the countries. For the PDP, from the picture, you will see that PDP 2024, first of all, I would like to give the comment to the government sector that they want to accelerate the clean energy productions more than 50%. And according to the previous PDP 2018 revision 1 is at 36%, but 50% is from the solar power at 17%. So, and the rest of the hydro and etc. So the PDP, for this PDP, could we accelerate solar power? That's a target set for, is it an appropriate set for goal for the clean energy? So we have to consider first, what would be the risk? The risk for the export sectors of Thailand that we need urgent, clean, renewable energy. So that we won't have to suffer the consequence of CBAM from the EU that would be enforced on the 1st of January of next year. And we expect in the next 2 years, and that would be the other measures from other countries in the same time. So it means our export sectors, if we don't have enough clean energies, we would lose the competitiveness. And also the manufacturers from the RE100. That's a target to use the 100% of renewable energy in clean energies, and they need it within the year 2030s. And are you aware that for the export and manufacturers of the RE100, they have 40% of need for electricity for the overall total electricity need of the country. So if I want to show you our easy pictures, so Thailand, we need clean energy at least 40% within the year 2030. You see that when we set the target for 51% at the end of 2037, that would be the risk for the export and the manufacturers of the leading company won't be able to allocate sufficient clean energy so that we can't maintain the competitiveness and also the economic value of the countries. This is the first risk. The second risk is on losing the reputations because Thailand we set the NDC for the carbon neutrality in the year 2050. So it means that we need to accelerate the the clean energy generation for 74%. So in the 3 years, we have to would we be able to increase the clean electricity for 23% or not? Otherwise, we won't be able to achieve our commitment to the international communities. As you all aware, the solar power is a resource that have the highest potential at the moment to accelerate the clean energy productions of the country. But the weak point of solar power is the stabilities. So the government need to find the catalyst to fill in the gap. So it means the energy captures. So I would like to go to this slide. The first technology that I want to talk about is the battery. Are you aware that in the past 10 years, the cost for the battery for electricity capture is decreasing by 80% and there's tendency to decrease even more? So from the Essentials information, it means that the solar power together with the energy storage or battery would be cheaper than gas, natural gas, and it seems to be cheaper still. And the government needs to invest on the technologies on the captures of the energies. And another two technology is smart microgrid and demand response. The PDP, this current PDP, is such a shame because they set only 1,000 megawatt for the goal, even though it's a technology that really enhances the capacities for the solar power. The microgrid is the decentralized electricity network that you can generate, captures, and transmit it in small area. If there's a problem from the main grid, this would be separate autonomously to generate and transmit and distribute to important node, for example, hospital and school. The demand response is to adjust the demand to balance the amount of electricity generated in the network. So you would see that the two technologies would enable to create the stabilities of the solar cell generations. So the government need to expedite the technology for the smart microgrid demand response and the battery storage, and also to accelerate the solar power. This is the first recommendations for the first round. So the main point is that to set up the PDP 2024 would be too low. It's underestimated. And so if you don't do it, you lose the opportunity, competitiveness, and also lose the reputation of the country. It's not just about the electricity or energy. It's about the opportunity for the business and the economies of the countries. And another question that people always ask is that if you install a lot of PV, would it be bad for the overview of the countries? Because a lot of people are trying to explain that if you install the PV in multiple places, it means the cost in the system or the cost of the grid would be higher because it needs a lot of management and maintenance. And even for those who don't install the PV, you have to pay higher.
And I've heard this quite a lot, but actually I wasn't sure. So I did a deep dive and I asked from several people and I got this response that people are worried that if there's a lot of solar installment, then those who are not able to access solar rooftop would have to pay more. After a while, I found that it is possible, but not all. It's not all true. Let me refer to the calculation of Ajahn Charlie at Sirinthorn International Institute of Technology. Actually, the cost of our electricity, you have to take a look at the top left part. The first one is the G is generation, is the basic generation. That is number one, 2.85 TH baht, and the transmission is 0.25 Thai baht per kilowatt. And D is distribution, which is 0.55 Thai baht per kilowatt. Now, so in calculation, you would do a long division, which is for the total electricity generation through the distribution and transmission costs. So we have to understand the number of people who goes through the use. So if you once you install the solar rooftop, what will happen? Let's go to this one, this page. So when you set up a solar rooftop, is that you will be able to use those who use direct electricity from that solar rooftop, right? And therefore, those that will be affected is the D, which is generation, because the government has also invested. But of course, there are less people for the division. It means that there are those who cannot install solar rooftop, you have to pay more for the loss, which is partly true. From the calculation, it does not go up very high, but it says that certainly the cost is a little bit more. But don't forget that if you install more solar rooftop, you use clean energy more. It means that if the government can manage well, a big if, then you can reduce your import for LNG, which means that you will be able to reduce the cost of G, and therefore when you recalculate the whole cost, it would not be higher because you are able to reduce the import. So you have to look at both the funding and the generation. If you only look at one side or one leg, then it will cost more. So you will see more importance on the installation of a roof if the government import LNG, which is higher price, and import, it means that the cost of electricity would be much lower. That is the good thing of solar rooftop. Now, let's look at the overview. This is the residential solar PV. If you look at the overview, we have both government, we have both private factories that install solar rooftop, and in the daytime, they can produce more solar energy than needed. If they do not have storage facilities or they cannot participate in the production of electricity, actually in the past we threw it away because they cannot sell it back. The amount of money that was wasted was at 2,186 kilowatt. You threw it out. Yes, because the state would not buy it. This is something of a pity and much waste. So if you think, if the state can take this amount from the generation of solar rooftop, you can use it a lot for the benefit of the country. Say, if you provide it to the vulnerable group free, for example. So instead of assisting on the cost of living of the people, you can reduce the cost of import of LNG because we have clean energy already. Why buy LNG, which is actually not clean? So you can actually save in the cost of importing those LNG, and you can use as a reduction for the cost for all Thai around 2.85 baht, 0.0179 TH baht. It doesn't look a lot, but it's actually formally, you don't see any value from this. And so you can actually pull it in. This is for everyone in the country. Now, let's go to another case. If you don't want to see it as a reduction of the electricity cost, but you want to see it as an incentive for more installation of solar roof, can we adjust the cost of the installation, not only just net building, but reducing the cost of solar PV installation? If you calculate together, you know, the waste energy is at 2.7 a year. If the state buys it 2.85 baht per kilowatt, actually it will be a lot more, but the state can reduce the import of LNG. When you recalculate and deduct this, the state can save more than 2 billion baht. If you use this as an incentive for adjusting the cost of buying from the residential cost, you can adjust it to by 3.3 baht kilowatt. So instead of 2.8, you can buy for 3.3. Yes, you see there are so many outstanding benefits from this. So first of all, you can reduce the import of LNG from abroad, and it can help stabilize the cost of electricity. Secondly, you can reduce the consumption costs of the people. Thirdly, you will allow the country to change towards clean energy and transit towards clean energy much more. So don't overlook those and focus only on the cost of electricity that will be increased. So if the state sees the importance and you provide support, incentive, and regulation, and you make sure that everything is ready to accept this, this is like a multiple benefit, isn't it? So if you can manage it well and everything is good, you wouldn't have to throw out more than 2 billion baht, and you then can use those 2 billion baht to manage to make the residential area install more PVs, and they can sell it at a high price. Now, let's come back to Kun Tirapong Sanglap from RE generation. After the course, you did many research. So I would like to know, like once you start to talk with the residential part and each of the households, what happened? What do you see from our household of not installing enough solar PV? From my discussion and talk with the people, we feel that the limitations. There are four main points. First is the knowledge. Second, where to install. And the third is the funding to install. And the fourth is, return ROI, because due to the various policy. The first thing I would like to talk about is the knowledge or awareness of the use of solar PV. What are the technology like? How does it work? And of course, we can actually focus more on how it produces energy or electricity, what is the ROI, there is awareness, confidence in the technology, and also confidence on the guy who is installing the system. Everything is tied together. So sometimes they post in the Facebook is because, the guy who installed it actually left. They accepted the work and they installed the system, but they did not ask for permission to sell back or to use it. So there are a lot of complaints. There are also tools for calculating the benefits of solar energy use. Solar is a huge investment in terms of the residential area, so you have to calculate the benefit and the use at home. So at present, we don't see a tool for the calculation for residential use at all. Now, this has caused less confidence in investment. Another main challenge is the complexity of the requesting permission for installing. Certainly, if one household wants to install 3 kilowatt, but you have to go and request permission from 3 agencies. The first, the local administration, in terms of structure, whether the structure is strong enough to install the solar roof, 3 kilowatts. If they can go and stand on the roof, the engineer then certainly can use. It means that you can accept the weight of the solar panel. But of course, you have to ask for permission. There must be an engineer who has to design. But if it's an older house, when you install without the design, it will be more cost for the house owner. You have to, draw a design of the roof. Now, apart from asking for DLA, you have to ask for the alternate energy office or the agency from the ERC. And then lastly, you have to request the EGAT. That's the last agency. It depends on whether you are in EGAT or Metropolitan Energy Agency. So you have to have a drawing that has to be signed off by an electrician. There must be someone who come and check at your house. So for the solar installation, people feels that it's a huge cost. You have to pay the agency twice for them to come in and check. Excuse me, may I have a question? I think I talked to a former professor at TDI. The same question. Solar cell, does that need that complexity in the installation? You know, when you install an air conditioning at home, you don't have to ask for anything. But in installation solar panel, what is the difference between the complexity of installing the air conditioning and solar paneling? For me, formally, it's very complex. Formally, yes. For example, to change from direct currency to alternate currency to use in the house. Formally, you have to rely on a good engineer, and then you have to link it very fast. But now there's an automatic machine that actually automatically links it to the electricity uh, system at home. So it's not complex anymore, but the regulation cannot follow on. Right. So there is a question that someone has asked. Let me ask Kun T.
There's people asking if you install the solar rooftop and you cannot keep it to use for the nighttime. Like, why can't we keep the energy to use for the nighttime? So how can we make it possible? Do we need to invest on the battery storage? How much more do we need to pay? So if you want to keep it to use for the nighttime, there's two ways. The first one is that if the battery, you can just store the electricities by yourself. That would be quite straightforward one. But the price for the battery storage is too expensive. It's becoming cheaper, it's significantly, almost 80%, but it's still a cost. It's too expensive though, and it make the cost benefit of solar still very hard to judge, and it take it longer for the return of investment. And another way is that the policy that would be supportive, that would be enable us to keep the electricity to use for later. I think net metering, yes. If I could ask Kun Tanai is also the entrepreneurs for the energy sector. So I always hear that if you install solar, there will be on grid and off grid. And there's another word that people talk in the circle is like sneaky grid. So I would like to ask Kun Tanai to explain to us because we don't. A lot of people might not be familiar with on-grid, off-grid, and sneaky grid. And for the off-grid installations, is there any complication? Can you please explain to us? Yes, for sure. That's a sneaky grid. Oh, I'm surprised. So to put it simply, on-grid is that you generate during the daytime, you get the sunlight, the solar, inverter, and they sync with the grid. And on-grid, make it easy to understand. So when the EGAT has a blackout or the nighttime, that the solar stop producing, the inverters would stop working. And if there's a blackout, where there's a very light and everything, the solar cannot produce. So that is the inverter that's on grid. But if for me, I use a lot, this is off grid because the work for recharge, our company, is for those remote areas that have no grid. So off grid, you need the battery as a supplement. On the time that there's no sunlight, like nighttime, the off grid still able to generate and transmit the electricity. So at the daytime, there would be the charging period, and nighttime, it would be charged to the batteries. And the hybrid also is a battery and the EGAT and solar. So at the nighttime, you can use the battery to still, the storage that you charge during the day, that could be used at nighttime. So like my house, I'm not home during the days. So 15 kilowatts, I would just load it for 2 kilowatts. The 3 kilowatts are actually I could generate 4. I keep 2, use 2, the rest I keep at nighttime. So if you have TOU rate, like that's still expensive until 10 o'clock, you can reduce the electricity cost. That is hybrid and off-grid. And the app grid in Thai is like sneaky grid, those who installed the solar rooftop and did not seek the permissions. Maybe they're connected with the on-grid but did not ask for the approval. Or like you just join with the inverter from the EGAT. You didn't ask for it. So that is about the regulations. Right now, the number that we see in the report, in everything, that we're not counting the factors of the sneaky grid. I don't know how much it is. We don't have any idea for those, is there anyone who do that? So we want to know also the one that did not seek the approval. So, but like if you have a residence, you want to install it by yourself, the solar rooftop, and then because the process is up for the general public, for the lay persons, it's so complicated. You have to seek permissions from different authority. You need to have engineering sign off, and it's so difficult to sell back as well. The quota is filled. There's restricted quota. It's not worth it. So there's a question. There's still not confidence about the consumer. For your company, those like credibilities, those feeling of hesitancy, how could we lessen it for Gotjik company? I would like to give you the background. So if I could show you a pictures or two of our slide. So Gotjik, the project that Recharge is doing is in the area that have no electricity at the first place. There's no grid. And so there's no point in asking to join the inverters from the EGAT because we're starting from the one that they have to generate their own electricity from diesel machine. This is Gotjik, the Jik Island. They have no electricity. So the problems about regulations, about working in tandem with the EGAT is totally irrelevant because this is another world. But the thing is that to use the solar in the Gotjik is that previously they have to do the diesel oil generating electricity, and the cost is exorbitant per 1 unit. The pure cost is 20 baht, and if they sell and buy, it's 25 to 30 baht per unit. And as Dr. Rapipa said, 4 or 5 baht that the EGAT sell. But here, the price even skyrocket to 30 baht. So what changed is that when we use the solar as the element to help with the electricity generations, I would like to show you the system. Maybe you could explain a little bit about Gotjik landscape, how's the situations in that Jik Island. Maybe people are not familiar with Jik Island. Before we use solar, we use a diesel and use the machine generators and distribute it to the community. So the atmosphere is like a Fisher's village, and they don't have a lot of electrical appliances. They just want lighting, fridge, and the electric fan, no AC. It's a mandate of the community that they would not use the AC, so the load is low. So what we do is that we increase the ratio of using renewable energies. Before they use diesel 100%, and now we have the solar rooftop, and it's like 50-50 for the diesel and 50% is the solar. Now it's 97% of the solar and 3% from diesel right now. And in the raining season, when it's raining, they use diesel, but we need battery storage. So this is off-grid, I want to say. So the electricity before is 30 baht per unit, now is 10 baht per unit. Still more expensive than on land. That is why when there's a battery, the investment cost is higher, but the cost for electricity would be higher still. That is still the remaining problems. There's still a gap between solar plus storage or solar plus battery that would be more expensive than buying from EGAT. Before going to Kunatsuda, we have two entrepreneurs. We talk about net metering, net billing. Now it's still net billing, and net billing that the buying price is still low, even though the electricity cost is high. And there's a criteria for buying just for 10 years. So for the consumer organizations, they're trying to compete and to campaign for net metering and with lots of recommendations. So what's your opinion regarding this? For Thailand, should we be net billing or net metering? Which way should we go for the policy? I would like to ask the both of you. Kunti, yes. Actually, net metering has been created in the age that solar is still hard to access, and they want people to use solar more. I understand that net metering is more cost benefit to the consumer, but it would be the burdens of the EGAT. For net billing, it's more flexible because the price could be adjustable. Personally, for the consumer perspective, net metering is hands down better, but how do we create the balance? This is something we need to consider because otherwise it would not be implemented in realities. คุณทนาย in my opinion, what we're using right now, the one we buy the excess electricity from their residents, 2.2 baht, is the kind of like net billing in a way. You buy 4 baht, but you sell back only 2.8. The net metering is like the meter. You buy 4 baht or 5 baht, you sell back at the same price. So net metering is more subsidy. You can just use the direct calculations. The consumer would be definitely happy. But for utility, you have to understand that the price that the cost of electricity generation for EGAT wholesale is 2 baht, 2.8 baht per unit for the cost of generation. So to buy back at 2.2, it's lower than the generations of the G. So I look at it that the one who benefit right now is distributor or the EGAT MEAPEA, that they can buy back as cheaper from buying from the EGAT. And you can, like you have the price profit in a way. So the policy for net billing is already in existence, but maybe it's not incentive enough. So net metering is better that for the consumer, but we need to weigh it out between the state and the citizen. How do we manage it?
เป็นผู้บริหาร
Right. Then we move to the Kunasada, who is the looking after crowdfunding platform. People have asked why you do not do crowdfunding for solar. Maybe Kunasada can tell us a little bit about this solar program in the residential area. Would it be able to go forward in Thailand? Is there a potential? Is there feasibility to do crowdfunding for this? Actually, crowdfunding in Thailand, simply, we would be like a medium for looking at whether it's possible, and we would have to look as a SME to invest. As mentioned by the researcher, the crowdfunding finance is, according to the crowdfunding, it would usually work for an entity, a legal entity. It has to be a legal entity. Whether crowdfunding can support SME is that the industry of solar rooftop or wind energy is a business with inherent risk. So we do have to calculate the risk of the project. Simply said, it's not a charity funding. So if we can assist and we feel that they can move forward, if this SME will install it for a factory in the community or the village that has potential and it's community financing, we look at the potential of that project. If it improves the community or the charity, can we do it? Yes, but the investor must accept that they will not get any profit because of course if they invest, they are looking for the rate of return, right? If you feel it's charity or if so that you can use more alternative energy or renewable energy, it might be possible. There are a lot of limitation, of course, for charity groups, then you would not be our regular investors, right? You would have to go and motivate these other investors who are looking to look at that. And SEC may have to do a lot more advertising. Can you please tell us a little bit more about crowdfunding in Thailand from the point of view of, like the overview? Yeah, yes, as mentioned, this is an alternative for SME. I think if you've heard about crowdfunding, they could hear the word solar more. Crowdfunding is quite small and not very well known yet. SME knows that there are less, new source of funding, but at present we have around 100 companies or 800 people, around 200 people who are here interested and know about crowdfunding. Our mission is we do risk assessment of those who submit a proposal to us. SME, they do not have collateral. They are not someone who's begging a road. They have a problem to access funding. They have put everything up for collateral. They may have not as good return. There is a large bank that they said if you have invoices, you come and loan from us. Actually, this product is not new. It has been put in under factoring or leasing. But actually the way we deliver, because we are a platform under SEC, the cost of operation is different, which can give us debentures for a small, for 50 million, 10 million. So we are a flexible platform, much more so than others. Those investors who come to look at us, they want profit because it is a debenture that has not have any collateral. They can accept very high risk investment. They are not just simply someone who comes in. They said, yes, maybe I can help as an E, but I can get a return of 10% or 15%. So the good feeling is in addition to the profit. So actually, in general, for crowdfunding, compared to others, what is the return? If you compare, it's about 12% a year. What is the amount for credit card? 15, 16, 36, 18. If you use cash from credit card, it's 36%. Now, if you talk from outside the system, loans, outside the system, have you known what it costs per day? 20% per day. Is it cheap? No. For clean loan, it's not expensive. Most SME can pay because this is much cheaper than they would get from a thing. So please don't think it's high. If for those who do not have money, they don't think it's high. If you have money, it's high. So if you don't have a credit card, they cannot get money, then it's worthwhile for SME who need to access funding in the short term. So we've been assisting more than 100 companies, debentures for about 24. We've had like 3 to 4 million baht, and the return is around 11.6%. Yes, there have been non-performing loans. Of course, then it would fall. Now, before I leave, I want you to see the scenario of Thailand. This is the amount of loans that has been given in Thailand. It has fallen since 2021. It means what? The cash flow has become more difficult because the banks are providing less loan. It's heading towards has fallen very deeply. We are those who are the small, medium size, and large size of enterprises are very hard to get the money. You don't have to look at anything else. You look at the statistics. So if the larger companies cannot get loans, the smaller companies have even harder time to get loans. I've listened to both of you about listening to the solar panels in the community. I feel so happy because it's something that is outside of our criteria. It means that you should do it. You should not wait for the state, because the project must have a point in which if we can propose it to the investor who wants profit. So listening to Kun Natsada and looking at the graph, I feel so sad. Should we turn it off? Why should we not give a hope to people? All right, Kun Laksana, let's go to this. This looks good. These are the people who we could help.
Investor perspective, that's understandable that they need the returns as a profit, as a number. So the trend for renewable energies, clean energies, it's still on the uptake. It's because the cost is lower. And the main point is that when you invest, you feel good. You feel that you invest in something that achieve net zero for decarbonization effort. And also, it's like fulfilling. That's how big is that impact investor group? And to enable the energy sector in Thailand to be better, is it one of the incentive for the investor? If we see people who's here and the number of the listener, I believe, yes, there will be people who interest as impact investor. But how do we get them to be aware? Awareness is the key. Do they know that there's a access or the opportunity for them to help their awareness as who's a good entrepreneur, who's not a good entrepreneur? We can help with that, but we cannot advertise. If there's a regenerations to have the debentures, we cannot do the advertisement. We can only advertise for the investors who's our members. And if we start from those who want the returns of the profit, you have to say that if anyone interested in solar power, you can become our investor, but they don't see our product. Who would dare to do so? It's like chicken and egg. What's come first? You have to. We should be able to do pre-marketing or at least some bit of advertisement. I have no idea about this. Why do they not allow the advertisement, and what is the risk involved? You have to ask SEC. To be honest, there might be some underlying principle behind it. Can you please tell us why it's prohibited, and should it be prohibited? In honesty, there's only 5 crowdfunding, and like the total number that we launched is very, very small. Not one crisis that we see in the news today. But because it's something very new, very novel, the people are still in the trepidations. No, not for the people, but for the governing body. They are worrying whether they would give you the permit, and you might be overclaimed, you might be tricking people. But other investment could have advertisement. Yes, you don't dare to be too direct, right? Just take a look at cryptocurrency. You have less advertisement because if the investor are at a loss and then they would submitted the petitions and all that. So they say it's better not just to make it too loud at the beginning. That's why it's very hard to grow. So if you wanted to really grow, it would be different, right? If it grow too fast, it's also difficult. So I kind of like nip it in the bud first, right? This is my wording, not Kun Natasuda. But I would like to ask everyone in the meeting room and in Zoom and on Facebook to post questions. You can scan the QR code on the table, on the screen, to send your questions. I actually have the last question that I want to ask everyone. So we set up the questions that the solar cell in Thailand, that's like a chain tackling it. If we want to unshackle it, what do we need to do from your own perspective? Because CFNT today, we get the entrepreneur, the public policy recommendations, and the crowdfundings. So what is the chain? What is shackling us? And how do we unshackle it? Maybe Professor Pui first, Dr. Pui.
ค่ะขอคลิกกันกี้ที่ได้ยินมาทั้ง
From everything that I've been hearing so far, we need to really expedite our work. But the one who have to solve the problem is the policy. The policy sectors are extremely slow and delayed. If you want to have a fundraising, to have more participations of the residents for solar power, you please show the slides again? The most important element is that the government so you as a policy maker, you talk about the rules and regulations of the government. Yes, what we can do and should be most beneficial is that the government needs the people to involve in the generations and the selling of electricity more and more. If you look at the residential or the citizen, is that net metering. Or it could be net billing even, but you have to adjust the buying price to be higher. The number, it could be up to 3 baht. So if you adjust it slightly, it will create more motivations for the people to install solar rooftop. Don't make the excuse that doesn't make sense. For example, tax system that you don't want to have the net metering. It's very small criteria. There's a claim, there's an excuse that in a net billing, there's buying and selling, right? And then you can collect from both. But if the government can get from both, but the net metering is all, it would be deductible in itself. So the government can just get the money from just one side. So the Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Finance, and others, line ministry, should they integrated their effort together so that we can mobilizing for the clean energy transitions. But if it's for the solar power, what the government need to do in the large scale is that to reform, to have the free market for the electricities, the focus on trading, the competitiveness and the prosumer, and also to selling the electricity with a fair price. The first step is to allow the private sectors to connect with the grid or with the network. To give you an easy example, we have the exports sector and the manufacturers of the leading company and data center that the government invited those leading company to invest. They required immediate clean energy. We have the consumer, we have the demand already, and we have the supply. Those who use the solar power to generate electricity to respond to those consumers. And we have the grid, the transmission line that's ready to send the electricity to the consumer. But the problem is with the owner of those grid or the government are not allowing you to use that route. So when the government allow for the rights for the private sector to connect with the grid, it's like you open up a blood vessel, you unshackle the chain. It's like the main blood vessel would be flowing. So you can compete, the private sector can compete more on selling the solar power, and it would enhance the effectiveness, reduce the investment cost, and also it would expedite the investment on the storage technologies so that it could enhance the potentials of the solar power, which is still the weak point, the storage. And when we open up the free market, the price of electricity would be acceptable both for the user and the generators. It would be fair and just price because of the market mechanism. The most important things to unlock this chain for the solar power is the government need to adjust from the top level. They need to adjust. They need to get the people to play a part more. That is the key. When the government accedes to it, you would see that the solar power would have more roles because the resources, that the clean energy that has the highest potentials, the sunlight, the solar is the energy of the futures to transit us into the clean energy for Thailand and the world. I would like to ask Professor Pui once again. You said the main shackle is the government and the rules and regulations. We have the elections for a year and a half already. So is it tightening or is it become looser? What about the tendency in the futures? It seemed to be better. I only see the idea, but I don't see implementations. Let me say that the idea is that there's lots of idea, lots and lots of idea, lots of good idea. I want to compliment that. There's lots of good idea that in the past regime never mentions about it. But this government talk about these things more, but the problem is they talk it. I want them to make action plan. Whether it would actionable or not, but we want to see that is something more than just talk. It could be the policy or anything that stimulate the people to see the importance of the transitional on the energy sector. This is something that I would like to, I want to give a credit, but not a full score. Yes, think and then act. Okay, that's what I say.
พงษ์บ้างนะครับคุณ
Let's move on to Khun Theraphong. The same question. What are those shackles in terms of solar and how can we break free? Right, if you look at the residential side, and the household side. I think it's the same point, but from another dimension. In order to be able to support this or promote this more, you need a policy to allow the whether it's net billing or net metering. If it's net billing, you have to should increase the price and you increase the quota, right? Because you cap the quota, and only 10 megawatt is so small compared to the Thailand's potential. And it's actually it's the fit problem. You know, we have much more potential. The secondly, the time for the request, the net billing, is because of the low cost of buyback. And you have to submit like more than a year before they allow you to do anything, or they refuse you. So the time for asking for permission, they should be expedited and to be more viable in reality. And also, so we need to adjust both the problems of permission, the 3 places you have to submit requests to, and also the link to the main grid by EGAT. For the residents, I think you should have more choices for funding. Actually, solar cell investment can generate income by 20 to 25% a year, and then it can last more than 20 years. So it is an option for investment, and the risk is not very high. The solar is ours. We use our own the electricity that we generate. It would be great. It's a great investment, that there should be more financial mechanism to support this by the banks or to actually solve, this initial funding. Crowdfunding is an interesting choice. Let me ask a little bit more in terms of how to expand the use of solar PVs. You said RE generation. Did you meet with this question? But I didn't know this at all. If I had known this, I would have installed a long time ago. Did you meet with such question? There have been both. Yeah, the first one is I didn't know anything about it, but they have to see examples from those nearby or someone close by who's installed. The other question that I have been bombarded with is the request for installation and permission. There's a lot of information, but some are in contradiction, some are not complete. People will get confused through this, information. So therefore, understanding the total system might be one problem. Yes, and also when you set up a system, they don't know where to apply for the permission, and it's complex, for example. Kun Thanai, what are the shackles and how do we break free to increase our solar PV installation Thailand to fulfill our potential? Can I go back to my slide? There is a comparison that in terms of my view, that for development for the on-grid, I agree with you all, that whether it's net billing, net metering, or third-party access, and request to use that grid access. Let me take a look at from the off-grid point of view. We don't have any coverage or shackles from the beginning, but what would be applicable is the main cost and the market mechanism. It should be natural. It should not be capped or adjusted by the government. This is Got Pudon in Satoon. If you don't have any mechanism, how can they push for solar? Before this, they did not have any solar. They use, a diesel electric generating machine. They had to pay like 3,000 baht a month for the oil. It's only for 2 or 3 hours a day. And, they only have little light. This is like 3,000 baht is the cost of the cost of oil, of the petrol to generate electricity. So, and they're only for a few hours a day. So what happened was they can use only for 2 or 3 hours a day, but then there's solar as a choice. So now they have an option. If they can produce the electricity themselves, they do not have to buy the electric generation machine, and it's cheaper, much cheaper. For example, for refrigeration, you see, they had to use all those big freezer container, but now these things that we do not use at home, a lot of times now it might end up on the island. So they use the solar to upgrade, you know, they use that upgrade. So this is like with ice, right? They don't have to use electricity at all. What happened was, this is about crowdfunding as well. It became an option. Say the project recharge, which we undertook
huge unemployment. So to help the business, small business is to help the business as a whole. So in Thailand, our portion is still very small. We have only crowdfunding. We don't have peer-to-peer. Peer-to-peer is personal loan, personal credit. Here we just have the different one. In the segment of the SME for the ordinary person, we cannot provide assistance still. So there's a question from the QR code asking about crowdfunding that what would be the interest rate or the profit for the investors, and do we have like the ABCD ranking as Kun Rapipat or head researcher explained? Yes, there's the first question from the investor. What is the interest rate? What's the profit? The solar to help the people is like you do the charity, but you get the profit. Yes, the profit is high because of the high risk. We do have the rating scale also, but to be honest, the rating that the platform attach is not considered a rating per se. The loan debentures it would be organized by Fitch. Crowdfunding is high yield junk bond. Junk is West and bond is debenture. We are in the BC level. A plus is B4. If there's a flooding, it's gone. So there's always risk in its nature. So you have to invest in multiple projects, but the return, it has to worth the risk. That's why the return is high, because the risk is high. And there's a question from the online. They make the observation that the reason that the policy of the government not and conducive for the solar because they wanted to support the monopolies of the big player, big company. So the support of the investment and especially the hydropower in the neighboring countries for the private sectors of the Thailand, 1 to 3 companies in Thailand are making the long-term contract for more than 20 years. So how do we support the alternatives energies? What's your perspective? When the government have the policy to support those kind of, like a big power companies to invest in neighboring countries and long contract term. It doesn't seem like questions. Well, if it's not a question, then I want to give my opinion then. When there's hydro power plant in the neighboring countries, there's a problem that if they build a new one, it would destroy the environment. And of course, the buying price that is higher than the original project that already been built and about to end. So the original one is 2 baht. The new project is 3 each, which is higher. The buying cost for the solar cell plus battery, it's lower than the electricity from the hydropower. So if you look at it, whether it's a good policy and it is in the PDP for this year, I disagree with that kind of hydropower plant constructions. But I cannot say whether it's monopoly or not because everyone can think for themselves. But if you ask me whether I agree with the hydropower plant in neighboring countries, I don't want additional constructions. I want it to be more renewed contract because the good thing about this hydropower is more stable than solar power. And it could help with the boost up when there's not enough renewable or clean energies. That's a good point about hydropower. But I actually want the government to continue with the contract for the existing one so that it won't be destroying more environment and also reducing the burdens of the end consumer. So no need, I don't want it to be building another power plant, but to renew the contract. So these questions, the subsidy from the government, what would be the part it play to create the people to be more interested? So the subsidy of the government, where should it fall into so that the people would turn to more solar rooftop?
เรื่อง subsidy
The subsidies from the state, right? Yeah, if you look at it from my point of view, I feel that whether the solar roof requires subsidy or not, it's difficult to answer because in terms of the financial or the money gain, is that in prioritizing it, it's cheaper. It might not be necessary, but subsidy in terms of money, no. But in terms of regulation, policy, or other market mechanism, or expanding the quota, I agree. But in terms of subsidy, monetary subsidy, or even reduction of tax, it is, yes, it would be sort of good, but you keep saying, I will, but it's not done yet. And the question is that do you need to do it? Because actually solar roofing is actually self-sustained. It should be something upfront. Pay as you save, as you see the model. I believe that it actually can unshackle us. You can actually loan the money at a minimal, maybe like 10%. People will do it. I don't know whether you agree, but I think for 4 years, it's 2.5% a year. You can divide 25% a year to pay for the profit and the savings, for example. So for the SMEs, even though they have cost of financing, it's expensive, but the return rate at present, it might be possible to finance it without any subsidy even. Oh, you don't have to give us monetary subsidy, just change the policy. You don't have to pay anything, the state. Kun Tirhong, actually, I think what might be useful is the upfront cost. I think several people cannot obtain a loan. I know that in large projects, solar cell can actually use as a collateral for loans. But for small residential area, the solar project cannot be used as a collateral because solar, they feel that, as discussed with the bank, because you can move the solar panels, right? If you want to get a loan for your solar, you have to use the house as a collateral. But then I wonder, what about motorcycle and and even a vehicle? Why can't that be used as a collateral? It can be moved in the same way. So maybe like a collateral for, there might need to be a mechanism to address the upfront costs much more. That's another question anyone can answer. The mechanism from the state, would BOI be able to support solar roofing? This is similar to what I asked you earlier. Anyone can answer. I'm not certain, but I believe that solar PV is considered as an electrical appliances, and you have to pay 30% tax, which is actually a high initial cost. But so if it's possible to reduce the cost for the solar paneling, you can get a better rate of return, and it will be an incentive. Yes, okay, reduce the income tax. I'm sorry, reduce the tax or the excise cost. There's actually PV paneling has already support from BOI, and several factories, the excise tax and also the cost, the custom fee. I think it's been used for more than 7, 8 years, the solar panels. So I think it's quite adequate at the moment. And the last question, all the questions have been asked, but for the last question that I would like to ask you, this is near the new year. For the next year, can you please advertise yourself, or can you tell us the mission for your next year? Say in terms of policy, Ajahn Poi, what you need to look at in terms of the policy. For example, what Ajahn Poi, can you please tell us for the new year? TDRI now is in the midst of studying at how we can accelerate clean energy, because we have to transit to clean energy, and which sector should we focus on with the most potential. I think solar is certainly one of our clean energy that we are looking at, and to see whether it's possible to unshackle the potential in order for it to have more role in the market. We also have to wait and to see the various policy that the state keep mentioning, whether it's going to materialize, and what can we do in order to assist the state to accelerate such a project. to make more clean energy for our country. This is something what TDRI is focusing on next year, and also the various project to actually spread out the clean energy into various areas. We might not wait for the state anymore to go towards the rural area. As mentioned, the first time bomb is 2026, is CBAM. So if it's only one more year, if you wait for the state to start, it will not materialize or come true. So how can we make CBAM, which is the most important contribution to the Thailand GDP, is to be able to assist and to SME as well. So Khun Therapong, please. For RE generation, our actual problem is to find ways to people to access solar generation. So we are looking at a fund looking at business model, which is called collective purchase. You collect all those consumer houses, maybe those who are in Bangkok, for example, 50 to 100 household, and then buy a package, buy a one single buy. I think it will improve the price. Also, it will be able to find solution about the trust in the installer and the trust in the submission. If this works, then I think the next step is to maybe discuss this with the funding institution to help with the upfront costs. This is something what we are doing. Khun Danai.
Are we going to any of the islands? Well, we are covering 4 islands now, soon 2 islands, one in Phanga, and then we probably go to Phuket. Who would believe it? Phuket, there's still area that's an off-grid, or even on the mountaintop, so, or Mae Hong Son or Koi. There's a lot of area for the off-grid work that we can do. But the scale that we are doing, as we charge, at the national level, maybe we trigger 0.001%, but for impact at the special area, we really contribute to the livelihood of the people in the area. There's one word that people say to us when we did the interview. That's one word. They said some might be tiny for big people, but it's a big thing for tiny people. And like the solar power, if you think about the percentage for the cost of the big company, it might not even come up to 1% or 2%, but the cost for the residents is 50% of their income that you have to pay for the energies. So for WeCharge, we think about these high impact projects. The 50 household, 100 household, we would continue working on this. And definitely we have 4 to 5 projects. We're thinking about crowdfunding. That would be the juristic or entity loans. We would leverage this to bundle multiple projects together, and we can scale up. I believe that would be the community. I mostly target one community at least per year that we're trying to work on it. Very interesting. It's a big things for the tiny people, and also there's a challenge for people and on the ground. So Kun Nathanan, for Kun Natsuda, for crowdfunding, we are an options for SME and investors. We are new way out. The visions of us is very clear. We are trying to do something that would be beneficial to the societies. We believe that if we reaffirm what we do, that it would help SME to access the funding and capitals. We're trying to find new financial instruments, even though it's some risk involved, but the target is that we will be a part to mobilize the society, to advance the society. We can't take long time to grow, but we want to stay for long term. And it's solar, wind, or electricity's appliance. SME is very varied. So if anyone's interested to help Thai people, please study our platform. We are really welcoming the investor who can take up the risk and want to help Thai people. And for SME, I also want to thank the CFNT that we are representing other crowdfunding that you might not hear before. So please take a look, and whether you want any investing, do you have any invoice that need to be paid, call us. We are more than happy to talk with you in all the cases. We might not be able to help all the cases, but we want to hear all the new models. So today's model, it has an angle for us to play. We are very happy to study. At least if we not be able to help you today, we might be able to do it tomorrow. So www.invest3 investree.co.th invest3. Thank you to all the panelists. First, Dr. Aripon Aswin Pongpan from the Energy Policy from TDRI. Second, Kun Thirapong Sang Lapcharan, co-founders of RE Generation Thailand. And next, Kun Thanai Potisat, founder of Gotjik Recharge Thailand. Last but not least, Kun Natsuda Pukanasut, co-founder and chief executive officer at Invest3 Thailand Company Limited. And for today, the report launch of CFNT and our public panelist discussions has concluded. I want to leave the last remark. CFNT is working on creating network. We want more networks always. The pie chart that Kun Yui showed that we have multiple members from diverse backgrounds. And CFNT always organizing the meeting. Then we have 4 rounds of on-site event. We have the public panelist discussions for 2 times. We invite the experts from outside the country, and we have the small meet and greet, and we have the online session as well. It's a very active network, and we would like to strongly encourage all of you to please generate the awareness about CFNT. And because of the net zero and climate change, we can't work it alone. We have to work as a network, and we have to see a common goal. And that's why I want to strongly invite all of you to become member of CFNT, and please share, post, and the video and the content of CFNT. Thank you so much.